today we are talking about a topic that seems like so silly, but is so important. And I feel like it is something I talk with my clients about all the time, and is one of the things I see most entrepreneurs getting wrong, so to speak, and keeping them really stuck. So it's asking yourself the question, is this a good idea? Again, seems a little silly, and you're like, of course I'm gonna ask myself that question, but you don't want to. I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you what questions to ask instead. We are going to dive deep into some strategy, and it's gonna make your Monday, hopefully. Or, your Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, whenever you're watching this. So let's get started. So this is something I literally work on with all of my clients, because all of my clients are kind of different stages in their business. Like I have some clients that, are working to get their first client. I have some clients that, are building multi-million-dollar businesses. And so I want to be clear that this is like a relevant thing, no matter what stage you're at in business. It might impact you differently, and we're going to talk about what that looks like, but it's like a really important and relevant question. Hi, Debbie. Thank you for joining me. Hi. Okay, so at the beginning of your business, sometimes you don't know if anything is a good idea. So you're spending a lot of time being like, but is this a good idea? Is this a good idea? Is this a good idea? And then later in your business, like as you grow, for a lot of my clients who have, like 20, 30, 50, 70,000 people in their audience, like they're asking themselves that question, is this a good idea? And the difficult answer is everything's a good idea, right? Once you have 70,000 people in your audience, to a certain extent, everything seems like a good idea, right? And I'm going to get into more specifics around that. But we have to stop looking at this as the most important question. The question isn't about if the idea is good. The question is about if the idea makes sense strategically and is in alignment with your goals. And that seems slight, but it is the most important difference, and it's going to be the thing that determines your ultimate success, or really you ultimately getting the results you want or not, right? So the question, is this a good idea, is a terrible one, because it's not, is this a good idea? It's, does this strategically make sense and move me to my goal? I'm going to give you a ton of examples around that, but I want to share a quote with you that I love around this. This is not exact, this is paraphrased, but a quote I love from Steve Jobs that I've probably shared on here quite a few times before is that everybody thinks focus is focusing on one thing, and it's not. What focus is saying no to the 100 other good ideas that come up while you're focused on that one thing. And I think that is perfectly illustrates what we're going to talk about a little bit today, which is that good ideas will always pop up. The better your business is doing, the more good ideas you'll probably have, and the more everything seems like a good idea. Or sometimes the worse your business is doing, the more everything else seems like a good idea. You guys know what I mean, right? Like if nothing's working, everything else seems like a good idea. And if everything's working, everything seems like a good idea. Can I get a raise hand emoji or something for that? Because I think that's so true. Sorry, I still have a little bit of cough. And it's what gets most people off on the wrong path, right? Is because when nothing's working, everything seems like a good idea. And when everything's working, everything seems like a good idea, which is why it's like the most awful question you can possibly ask yourself. I literally have a client who right now is like, one of the jokes is she's like forbid from asking that question ever. Like she can never ask herself or come to a call and ask, is this a good idea? Because it doesn't fucking matter if it's a good idea, right? What matters is if it strategically makes sense for your goals and your growth, right? Thank you, Debbie. So true, so true. What matters is if it's going to strategically take you to the place you want to be. All the rest is irrelevant, good idea or not. Right? So I'm going to give you some examples. So one example is is it a good idea to launch a marketing course for my audience? Sure, probably. But if my goal is selling one-on-one, does it strategically make sense? No. Right? So for example, I could have a client that has an audience of 2,000 people They're working on filling their one-on-one. They're almost there. And they're like, oh, you know, like 2 people in my audience said they'd really love a marketing course from me. Is that a good idea? I mean, sure, it's a good idea. It just is not at all strategically aligned with what we're trying to accomplish, with what your priorities are, with what your goal is. Does that make sense? So what a lot of entrepreneurs do is they'll answer that and they'll be like, yeah, a marketing course, that is a good idea. And 2 people asked me for that. That's such a good idea. Let me do this. And they're off on that train. And then like 3 months down the road, they're like, wait, fuck. What I actually wanted was to get to a certain income level, was to fill my one-on-one. And now I'm like doing all this other stuff that I didn't actually mean to be doing. Right? And it's so confusing because the answer was correct. Like, it was a good idea. You know, it just wasn't a good idea for that thing, for their goals. You know what I mean? So I think that that is just so important in terms of figuring out what you really want. Aline says, so true, just bloody try it. Yes, Debbie says this is such a good filter to run things through. Exactly. Jessica tuned in while I was coughing. I am okay. I'm just like battling allergies right now. Thank you for being here live. Thank you, Claire. I appreciate that. I receive that. I like that. I would love to be a wise lady. Here's another example, which a lot of people come up with. Is it a good idea to create this new opt-in on sales? I'm just making sales up as an example, right? But some of my clients will come to me and be like, you know, one of my clients asked me something and I had this idea like of a really good opt-in for sales and I think I'm going to create it. Is that a good idea? Well, like, sure, your client really likes that. You were having that conversation, and opt-in on sales is probably good. It's a good idea. But again, not the relevant question. Say what they're in is launching a course on mindset. Well, then no, don't fucking spend a bunch of time doing a new opt-in on sales. You're about to launch a course on mindset. That doesn't make sense at all. Right? But it's about, does it strategically make sense? It's not at all about, oh my gosh, excuse me guys. It is not at all about, is it a good idea? Like, most ideas are going to seem good and you're going to have some level of reasoning behind it, right? I've had so many good ideas in my business where I'm like, oh, my audience would love this. This would be so smart. This is a great idea. I should do this. But like, a lot of them just don't strategically make sense for what I'm trying to accomplish, right? And that is the important part. So I just turned this off. Hold on one second, guys. I think that is my problem. I have my fan on and I think it like irritates my throat. So many issues. Okay, moving right along. Another one that is this idea of, like, a lot of people want to like write a book or something like that, right? So let's use that one as an idea. Like, is it a good idea to write a book for my business? Sure. Honey and lemon, Claire, totally. I'm going to do that right after this. I've been doing that a lot and I've been feeling better, but at this moment, apparently my throat has decided to be very annoyed. But should I write a book? That is such a good one. Because so many people want to do that and it seems like such a great idea. But I actually had a client ask me that recently. And her goal right now, excuse me, is to double her income in the next 3 months. Nothing about writing a book strategically makes sense. It might be a good idea and long-term it might be beneficial, but her goal right now is just to triple her, or what did I say, double? I think triple, let me think, triple her income in the next 90 days. That's totally possible, you know, for her. Oh my God, I cannot speak. It's double in the next 90 days. I keep saying triple because I'm thinking about 3 months. Forgive me. You get what I mean. I want to double my income in the next 90 days. That's totally possible for her, but if she took a bunch of time, energy, and effort to write a book that may or may not even be done in those 90 days and surely wouldn't have a publisher get published, come out, whatever. Even if she wanted to do an Amazon launch, it would take so much more time than that, right? So does a book seem like a good idea? Yeah, it is a good idea. It just doesn't strategically make sense for what you're trying to do in your goals. And this is where I see people get so fucking derailed in business is that they keep asking the question, is this a good idea? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be yes. Again, like this is actually a bigger problem for a lot of my clients who are creating just a bunch of success, because everything they put out, their audience is eating up at this point, and they're getting asked for a lot of things. And so all of it seems like a good idea, and it's so tempting. Like, you know, they're jumping on a live stream and people are like, oh, I want to hear more about that. Oh, you should do a training on that. Oh, you should opt in on that. Oh, you should like run a course on that. And it's so hard to filter through that. But again, the point is, it's all a good idea. And if you're not going about it strategically, it doesn't make sense. I have another client recently who, she's been in business a while. She has like a ton of collateral, courses, different things like that. But what she really needs in her business right now is a big cash injection. So we're focused on like high ticket one-on-one. And someone had said to her, it's a really good idea to put all your courses on your website and have them evergreen right now, blah, blah, blah. And when we had a conversation about it, it's like, it is a good idea. It's just distracting from our goal, which is a big cash injection of high ticket one-on-one. So of course, we're not gonna, number one, devote time and energy to that. And two, it almost takes away from what our goal is right now. So again, it's like a smart idea. And yeah, we eventually want to do something with that collateral, right? It's not a good idea right now, right? Patricia says, yup, the plain truth. Exactly. So this also really comes into play with looking at the micro and the macro. So this is another way to think about it. Micro, a lot of things seem like a good idea, right? When you look at it in the entirety of your business and your life and your goals and your priorities, a lot of the micro things stop making sense, right? Sandra said, this is such a good message. I have so many things that I'd love to create, but not strategic to do them all at the same time. Exactly. And again, it doesn't mean they're not good ideas. It just means that like they're not a good idea for what your goal is or what you're trying to accomplish, which is why I'm such a stickler for like knowing what we're working toward, knowing what the strategy is, knowing what the plan is, because it makes it easier to filter all this shit out. When you're not being clear and strategic, it's so easy to be like, that's a good idea, I'm gonna go do that. And you know, again, you end up weeks, months, a year down the road, and you're like, why the fuck did I ever do that? Like, this was my goal. How did I get so sidetracked? I just see it happen all the time. And then people are so frustrated because they're like, but it was a fucking good idea. That's okay. You can have good ideas. It doesn't mean they'll always strategically play out how you want them to, though. Do you know what I mean? So let's go back to micro and macro. So micro, is it a good idea to create this sales opt-in because 3 people asked me for it? Whatever. Yeah, like if you're just narrowed in on that one little point, of course that makes sense. Of course, strategically, you're like, well, my audience is asking for it. Why wouldn't I do it, right? But you have to always be looking at the macro picture of your business. What you're doing now, where you're going next, and what your actual goals are. And you have to be making your strategic decisions in alignment with that. If you're not, you will bounce all fucking over the place, right? And I think this is what we do when we watch other people, is we go, oh my God, she had such a good idea doing that. I should do that. And a lot of times it'll be because we watch something play out for someone and we see how it got them a lot of results. And so we decide that we should do that, right? And we're like, it totally makes sense. So-and-so did that and I saw how well it worked for her. And I want those same results, so I'm gonna do that. But there's so much more to it than that, you guys, right? Like, you don't know what her macro strategy is, how she'd already been laying the foundation for that, what that led into, what she had already put into place, what the entirety of her 90-day strategy had been to make that one thing happen. I see this all the time with like people that'll be like, you know, grab my 5 Facebook posts that made me 100K or some shit like that, right? And people are like, oh, that's such a good idea. I'm going to write 5 Facebook posts just like that. I'm going to grab it and download it. And I'm going to focus on that. But that is like such a fucking micro thing. Like I could write a post now and make that much too, but it's because I've spent the last 4 years building an uber engaged audience that loves me. Do you know what I mean? Like, has nothing to do with those 5 fucking posts. So it's the micro versus the macro. Another example of this is I recently did, in June, I guess not super recently, feels recent. I did the MSC marathon. Does anybody remember that? It was really good. Did anybody watch that? Yes? No? Give me a little hand if you did. But anyway, I did the MSC marathon. What I did was I went live on my Facebook business page every day for 30 days, or every weekday rather, for 30 days. So it was like I ended up doing like 25 10 to 15 minute-ish videos every morning at 7 a.m. So thank you, Claire. I'm so glad you watched. I really, really had fun with those. But so many of my clients and friends came to me after that and were like, oh my God, I love what you did with the MSC marathon. That was such a good idea. I want to do it. I was like, I mean, yeah, it was a good idea. But how are we using it for you? Because I did it for like a very specific, strategic, and planned out reason. I did it on my business page for a very specific, strategic, and planned out reason. I did it for the amount of days I did it for a very specific reason. I did it the timing I did it for a very specific reason. Like all of it was strategically happened, right? It was not like because it was a good idea. So for them, when some of my clients came to me, I was like, well, what are we using it for though? Like, what's the point right now? And most of them, when we talked through it, like that didn't make sense for them in context of what they were trying to do and create in their business right now. Again, it's a good idea. And if you watched me, you probably were like, oh, that's such a fucking good idea. And like, I love how she did that. And that's so smart. And I should do that. But it's never that simple, right? Just because it was a good idea for me and just because it looked like it made sense, the good idea isn't the important part. The strategy behind it is, right? Thank you, Lorian. Thank you, Elaine. Yeah, Claire, it was like way more of an audience growth mechanism, and it was more to gather a Facebook ads audience that we could retarget, and it had really nothing to do with like immediate sales at all. And so that's my point. Like a lot of clients that want immediate sales came to me around that. And I was like, well, that was like a long-term play. That was like a totally different strategy. So like, how do we make a strategy that actually fits you right now that's not just like a good idea? Does that make sense? I drank like 3 different beverages on this live stream. I have so many beverages on my desk right now. I just love choices. What can I say? If you've ever been around me or been to a retreat with me, you know I have like at least 3 beverages around me at all times. But that's really, I think, where people get themselves so stuck is they're just seeing the front end of someone's business and they're seeing the good idea. And then they're going, I should do that good idea, right? Instead of being like, strategically, does that make sense for me right now? Is that the perfect thing to add to my business? Is that the exact right strategy to do to get the thing I want, right? That's an awesome reason. Thank you, Lorian. And again, it just made sense for me at the time. I was totally full. I was not selling anything else. I did not need to make sales that month. And so it made sense to focus on like a long-term audience growth play to sell smaller ticket DIY products that I have. But like for a lot of people, they can't make a play where they're not getting clients for a month, right? So my point is, ultimately, you have to figure out what's best for you at the right timing. You know what I mean? And good ideas are a dime a dozen, but strategic and well planned and placed ideas that are in alignment with your goal, that's a whole different ballgame. And I'm not trying to make it super complicated because you know I don't love the overcomplication of online strategy, but to just like make it simple and break it down, what you're doing can't just be a good idea. It has to be the perfect fit for what you want to achieve, you know? And so asking yourself that question often and or having a coach that can help you think about that and guide you on that is so important. I literally just had this conversation with one of my clients today. She came to me and we were planning on doing a webinar series, and she was like, oh, I'm like I don't know if I feel like doing that anymore. I was thinking about doing this instead. This seems like a good idea. And I said to her, like, well, here are the reasons strategically that we were going to do a webinar series. Here's why it made sense. Here's what we wanted to capture with it. Here's what data we were looking for. Here's what results we were trying to get. This other thing that's a good idea, is it going to give us all that? Like, is it going to give us that data and that same opportunity and those same things we were looking for? And she was like, oh, fuck, probably not. Good point, right? And so we might redesign the webinar to make her feel better, to make it feel more ease-filled or whatever, but we don't want to give up on those strategic things that we absolutely want to create just because something else is a good idea. Because ultimately, when we give up on the strategy, we're in many ways putting ourselves in a position where we are less likely to get the result. We're just doing things versus aiming at a target. You know what I mean? If you can aim at a target, you are likely to hit it. If you're just doing things kind of because they seem cool or like a good idea or because someone else did it and it seemed to work really well, you're gonna be frustrated every time. Like if everyone copied my MSC marathon idea that was trying to make quick sales, they would be epically frustrated at that because the point of that was not that, right? Again, even though it's a good idea. So what I really want to impart upon you today is that strategy matters so motherfucking much, right? And that making strategic choices in your business matters so much, and that if you could eradicate the question, is this a good idea, from your business decisions, you will be amazed at how much easier those decisions get, how much more strategic they get, and how much more in alignment with what you want to create they get. So many people waste so much of their time following good ideas, right? Okay, I'll go create that course. I'll go create that sales opt-in. I'll go write that book. Fuck, why can I not make more than 5K a month? That's why. Those are the people that feel like they're working so hard all the time and not getting the bang for their buck they want, right? Because they're following a lot of good ideas and not strategy. Does that make sense? Because they're doing a lot of things that feel like they're a good idea. Oh, it'd be great to create this opt-in. I should totally create this course. My audience would love a membership site. Let me also think about this, you know? And they're like working all the time, implementing all of these good ideas. This is where so many of my clients come to me, is they're like, I want to get something back from my business. Like I'm putting so much in and I don't feel like I'm getting enough back. That's where so many of my clients come to me. And 9 times out of 10, they are working really hard. Like they're not just making that up. It's just that they're not doing it in a strategic way and they're not making strategic choices, and their audience is just mirroring that to that, you know? And so if you can really figure out how to stop asking this question and how to start making strategic choices, the likelihood that your business starts giving back to you what you're putting in just grows so much. Like I always feel like I'm getting so much more for my business than I'm putting in. And you guys know me, I put in a lot, right? Like I deliver a ton of value, a ton of content, and showing up all the time, right? But the reason I feel like that is because my choices are always incredibly intentional and incredibly strategic, right? They're not just following the next thing. Like, honestly, it would be a good idea if I created a course for you guys. That doesn't at all strategically make sense with what I want to do next or what I'm good at, right? So I'm not going to do it. For someone else, that might be the exact next strategic move. It's a good idea though, either way. You know, it's just not the good idea for me that strategically makes sense in my business. Claire says, yes, I learned that since working with you. Thank you, Claire. Beautiful. So that's kind of it. That's sort of my lesson for the week. My call to you is to please stop asking yourself this question. It will make you insane and it will make you work way more than you need to and have way less results to show for it. So the question to ask yourself is, does this strategically make sense and is in alignment with my goals and what I want to create? Right? And if you don't know the answer to that, or if you don't have a plan for that, you have to get support because that's going to be the difference maker in you actually seeing results and you actually moving forward. If you're just in a position where you're following a lot of good ideas for yourself, you're always going to be making less than you could and having less results than you could. So that is it. I hope you guys have a beautiful week. I hope you're having as happy of a Monday as I am, and I'll feel better soon. Thank you, Claire. I intend to be 100% better by tomorrow. That is what I have decided, and I hope that y'all have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. If you have any questions around this, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'll come back and check in and answer any for you that I can. All right, guys, have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.